This week on the Old School RuneScape Update, sailing skilling content is unveiled, providing new fish, trees, and corals. Much of the content is used only within sailing. Is this a problem? Also, the Final Dawn ends the Varlamore story, but let us not forget Shadows of Custodia and Scrambled. This is the Old School RuneScape Update, episode 81, recorded Saturday, August 2nd, 2025. Walking the Plank. Hello everybody and welcome back to the Old School RuneScape Update. This week we are in with the newest blog on sailing skilling, amongst other things. Plus we're also going to discuss some Varlamore lore and what is the penultimate episode of the Old School RuneScape Update. Welcome back, Sirion.
Hello. They do have a habit of throwing a spanner in our plans, don't they?
Yeah, well, we were just going to discuss Varlamore lore this week, and then this sailing blog post came out, and, you know, this is the penultimate episode of the Old School RuneScape Update, which next week will be the last one. We will have some details about that at the end of the show for anybody who wants to contribute to that episode. But, you know, I feel like sailing has been one of our recurring topics here on the podcast. And what better way to, you know, kind of go out than to talk about this new skill to the game?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because there's
not
lots
not really this new skill, but lots of other skills mostly.
Yeah, and you know, there's things in here I like, there's things in here I don't like. There's a lot more that I like in the Varlamore quest stuff, which we'll get to, but of course, in the meantime, full show notes can be found over at update.show/OS. We also have our community Discord over at update.show/Discord, and the friends chat can be found in-game at BitsBytes. So there's so much here that sailing is going to touch in all the various islands and incarnations that we're going to be seeing here. We're just going to run through some of these, and
the fact that they managed to fit this, because we know and we've learned this in the past that a news post on the Old School RuneScape website have a character limit.
Yeah,
we know this. The fact that they managed to fit all of this in, I think they're probably pretty close to that limit. So it's pretty amazing. It's yeah.
A lot of it's done with images, if I must say so. Based on.
Oh yes, but also all of the information from the images is also in text format, which, by the way, is really important for accessibility reasons. So
yeah,
I
and
appreciate that.
and AI training purposes and scrapers.
Well, they don't really need. They can get that from images these days. Let's make the AI bots at least work for it rather than just steal stuff, right?
Yeah, and I mean I've done that before. I've looked into I mean I haven't AI scrape, but I have tried to use the LLMs for RuneScape related things, and you know it kind of works sometimes, and then it gets things horrendously wrong. But woodcutting, 4 new types of logs here, one of which, the lowest level one at level 40, is primarily only going to be used in fire making and quests. They highlight, you know, this is no good for boats, but it might come in handy for questing. Gives comparable XP to a maple tree. And then the other ones, as you level up, are designed to be primarily used in shipbuilding materials here. And when do we get into the point here of what the issue is with these, with some of these skilling updates?
For me, I mean, first of all, the Jatoba trees that are only useful for fire making and quests, it honestly feels like a really weird thing to have in the game. It doesn't
They're just
feel
there.
like it fit. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't feel like it fits any gaps. Like I realize that there's a small gap between teak at level 35 and maple at 45.
But
Let's
this
be
doesn't
honest,
take
you're gonna
long to get there.
no, especially teaks are really fast. They actually remain faster than maple logs, even if you don't tick manipulate them.
Yeah.
I I don't know. Jatoba trees can go and burn in a fire. Well, literally, apparently. But
I was gonna say.
yeah, it to me that feels like a weird addition. Samphor, Ironwood, Rosewood. I mean, fine. I do actually appreciate that getting like a parallel progression in hardwoods, and I like the idea of we have softwoods on one side, so that's like normal oak, willow, maple, yew, magic, and redwood.
Yeah.
You have that on one side, and then you have the redwood. I think is a weird one to begin with because you can't make bows out of
It's
it.
quote unquote special.
Yeah, and then you have teak, mahogany, and in the future camphor, ironwood, and rosewood in the future. It doesn't. Maybe it's because I'm not used to it. I feel that teak and mahogany is very um they're very common, right?
Yeah.
But I have never heard of camphor. And apparently Camphora officinarum is a species of evergreen tree.
Which is not what it looks like in the post.
No.
But
so,
I mean,
yeah, maybe not the most elegant addition to the skill, but yeah.
Or maybe, I mean if you Google image search camphor tree, kind of similar.
Oh yeah, okay, I can find. Oh, Florida, interesting. Yeah, okay, fair enough.
Yeah. I remember back in the day when I was discussing the addition of mahogany and teak first time to the game on the podcast, and I was explaining the difference between hardwoods and softwoods, and my teenage co-host at the time just could not keep it together talking about hardwoods and softwoods. So thank you for keeping it together.
Yeah. I don't mind. So here comes my problem, right? With and this will be a pattern that comes to all of this. For me, I appreciate that we want more progression in hardwoods, especially because it makes sense that hardwoods are the thing that we will be using for ships. I don't have any actual real life shipbuilding experience. I don't know what's normally used for ships, but makes sense to me.
Well, this day and age, it's steel and concrete.
Yeah, well, the big sort of downside is that I mean they do say that camphor, ironwood, and rosewood will be used for construction.
Also, blowpipes.
But then later on, they don't really like it won't be added to the POH, and that's mostly because of balancing reasons, from what I understand.
And they want to keep mahogany top tier.
Yeah, but do we want that, right? Like I understand why, but the whole point of this blog is how these sailing resources will integrate with the rest of the game.
Right, and the sense we'll get as we move through that is that it's often in its own ecosystem. So
a lot of it is in its own ecosystem, and I feel the flow is very one-dimensional, right?
Yeah.
Woodcutting feeds into sailing, but sailing itself doesn't really feed into other skills. Looking at these woods, these trees in particular, that worries me, and that's kind of why I would love to see a little bit more attention placed in sort of two things. Is first of all, I hope that not all of these resources will be exclusive to sailing. Hardwoods are a thing that we know of on quote unquote the mainland. Some of it, like a lot of it, is in Varlamore, for example.
Yeah, the jungle areas.
I do hope. I mean, I'm fine if some of the more exotic things only are out in the ocean, but I do hope that for all of these resources, especially the woodcutting and mining ones, we also get updates to the mainland and get them added there, just so that the ecosystem doesn't feel like it is very isolated, but that it actually feels integrated in the game both ways, right? And not just the fact that, oh, we're using existing skills, look how integrated we are. Like, no, 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 no. I want my lead ore to be in the dwarven mine, for example, and
And
things like that.
And that's the exact same thing when it comes to mining. It says that the sailing ores will be smithed into bars and then used to make new facilities and upgrades for your ship. There is no conversation about needing lead, nickel, or rubium outside of sailing.
And those uses can come in the future, right?
Sure.
I also do accept that, they need to get sailing out of the door if they need to find uses for all of this. And maybe it's a matter of time, maybe it is. But like, I would like to see at least a mention of like an intent of, what, we're going to be revisiting POH, right? Because the POH progression, if you look at a lot of items in like the costume room or elsewhere, the progression is kind of dumb, where it's like normal, oak, teak, mahogany, gilded, super gilded.
Yeah,
throw some marble in for the mix, right? Like at some point,
and see that's the thing with the POH is that you only need a few things here and there that are marble and gilded. You don't build everything in that way. Unless you're trying to show off.
I do appreciate that this might significantly shift the meta, but I think you could bypass that by making planks out of these logs significantly more expensive and maybe not even doable at a normal sawmills. Just to, construction isn't meant to be a time-consuming skill. It's meant to be a goal thing.
Yeah, money-consuming skill. And similarly for the mining, none of the ores being added are designed to replace any of the other ores that we have for mining XP. They're all designed to have that specific use for sailing here. They mentioned that with lead, nickel, and both types of rubium as well. So let's see if this trend continues. We also of course have fishing that will be added through the deep sea trawling activities, and then the fish can be used in some cases as food, but also potion ingredients with herblore. Interestingly enough, I think
they get back to this a little bit later. So
yeah, we'll talk about the herblore side of it after. But I think the thing that I'm most happy about here is that we have another Caramboin type food being added in the sense of halibut for 20.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
And I have long been an advocate, primarily on RS3, but it's good to see this coming in on OS, of diversifying cooking aside from, hey, just whatever you're cooking, it heals more as you level up. That's fine. But add in some other little things along the way, too. And I like the bluefin tuna restores 5 prayer points. Yellowfin restores energy, and haddock overheals. I like those little special cases like that.
I thought we were going to talk about this when we got to the cooking part of the blog, but I guess we're talking about it now.
I would just go top to bottom.
Yeah, they repeat that information later as well. I'm going to save my comments for when we get to the cooking parts.
Okay. Fishing-wise?
I think it's fine. The lantern fishing, I don't know what it will do and where it will sit. I don't feel harpoon fishing is very popular right now. You get fish offcuts though, which feels
immersive.
Which of course you use for I remember now, that's of course what you use for deep sea trawling as a bait. So, and then the squid beak, yeah, it sounds like this is sort of where you gather the bait for the deep sea trawling. I hope at a decent rate.
So, and I mean, from that perspective, it has to be there, right? And my question is, and I believe this will pass, but if this did not pass, specifically the fishing part of this poll, then what?
Awkward.
I think, and then I say that, but I just think it's an interesting thought exercise because I feel it'll pass, but it's just like, what if, right? So, okay. You get to move on to Hunter?
Yeah.
Crab paste? Crab meat?
All hail the crabs. They're taking over the entire game. First the gemstone crab, and now the crab hunting. Honestly, I believe this will fill a really important gap in what we currently have in Hunter.
Yeah, we were actually talking about this earlier today, and
yeah,
Hunter is effectively birdhouses until rumors that, what is it, 53?
54.
54. Yeah. And that's one way of doing Hunter, but to actually have a method that you engage with in the skill at a lower level that, as they say, the benefit here is predictability. XP rates are stable and fixed. I think that's perfect for Hunter.
Exactly. I think the red and the blue crabs at 21 and 48 Hunter respectively fill perfect spot where that will be a good, solid, reliable XP rate until you have Hunter Rumors. There's also, I think, drift net fishing is also, but that requires 44 Hunter. So drift net fishing is actually also a pretty good Hunter training method as well. But again, you're only really unlocked at 44 Hunter and 47 fishing. So again, really the only thing you have up to then, if you don't want to do the quote unquote dumb training methods that nobody really wants to do without Hunter Rumors, birdhouses are the way to go. And you early on, like each birdhouse check is a level of Hunter, so it's not that it takes too long, but at some point the time waits become pretty significant, and then this becomes like a nice way to sort of speed things up.
One thing I find interesting is that nowhere in this blog post do they say what the sailing level requirements are for any of these to unlock the areas.
Nope.
I'm going to assume that they're going to be relatively similar to the level of the other skills, and it's not that you're going to need like 75 sailing to unlock the level 48 blue crabs. Which I assume would be the way to go for that. So Hunter, that's a positive check. I have to talk about farming.
Yeah, of course you do. Go for it.
This brings us coral in the form of the coral nursery patch, which is brand new, and then they're also indexing into the hops patch to bring us flax, hemp, and cotton, and then of course that you're going to be able to grow the trees that we talked about in the wood cutting section here for this. And as per usual, what is grown in farming most of the time filters down into herblore, except for obviously flax, hemp, and cotton. In this case, that's not necessarily a herblore ingredient here, but when it comes to the corals, yes. And I know that is something we want to come back to at the next section here. But overall, whenever there's a new world map expansion that happens, whether it be Varlamore or what we saw in the sailing beta, I always like to go and look and see what the farming patches are, and it's very clear that these things are going to be on the Great Conch if that comes into game, specifically with the coral patch. And I feel like farming is a solved skill. I don't feel like we're doing anything here that is groundbreaking compared to what we just discussed for herblore. So whether or not that makes it, less controversial and maybe more boring and more likely to pass, maybe that's a good thing. And it's because it's not necessarily impacting the skill all that much. But I think the coral nurseries are going to be the thing that everybody's going to be coming back to in this case, specifically the grow time on them of 2 hours and 40 minutes, which isn't something that is long like a fruit tree or a wood tree or any of the special trees. It's right in between the wood trees, the mid-level wood trees, and herbs, which makes it something you can do at least a couple times a day if you're religious about your farming runs, like I know you are.
Yep. Yeah, it's gonna be very interesting seeing where they sit. As well, sort of a cool idea.
Yeah.
I am guessing. Are they fragment seeds, or can you make them sort of out of the umbral itself? Because I guess that might be a little bit different. But yeah, no. All in all, the farming part is very non-controversial for me. I like that they're adding the hardwood tree as actual seeds. It makes a lot of sense. That does feel like good integration. Though again, we're not getting the Jumbi what's the tree called? The Jatoba tree either, right?
No.
So again, it feels like such a weird. I don't know. It feels like maybe I shouldn't put too much attention on it. It's a quest item, right? Maybe it's really just a quest item.
Yeah, and the way I saw it when I first read it is that these are like the trees on Miscellanea. They give 1 XP each and they serve a different purpose.
Yeah, maybe. Anyway, I do really like that they're using the hops patches to grow things and being able to actually grow flax. To me, I could see that being a very, very big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. They say the average yield for flax will be 35.
Which means that leprechauns will be able to note.
Oh, thank God.
Flax. Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's any leprechauns. Liletia.
No, yeah, Letia, yeah. But there's a bank in Letia.
So that doesn't matter as much. But the main reason we're looking at flax, cotton, and hemp is the textiles part of crafting.
Yes, which is where we're going next. So, flax you can also turn into linen. Hemp we can turn into hemp or canvas. And cotton we can turn into cotton. Yeah.
Which they say will be used to make certain ship facilities.
Yeah.
Again, how much of this are we going to need is my question, right?
Probably not too much, which I think is fine. Again, I feel, maybe this should become part of construction as well. Like maybe the higher tier beds that you put in a bedroom. You want linen, right? You don't want just normal cloth. I like my bed sheets to be linen, or maybe even cotton. That again. And this feels like it could. This feels like it could do with a little bit more integration with construction.
Yeah,
and both ways, right? Where's my bolt of cloth? It feels weird that's.
Because I was also going to say, they mention with that crafting, and you're talking about construction right now, but I don't think you're going to be getting huge amounts of crafting XP for spinning these or looming these.
No.
And you could integrate with construction as well on that for some of the higher tiered bedroom and living room items.
Mm-hmm.
Fletching blowpipes? That's interesting. They say, "Hey, there's your camphor use." Or no, sorry, that wasn't it. But camphor, ironwood, and rosewood, 12, 16, and 22 ranged attack bonuses for a level 65 ranged weapon. requiring
Yeah.
at most addy darts.
So we saw actually a comment on Reddit. Like a lot of people were asking, like, why not rune darts for Rosewood? The problem turned out is then it power crept the toxic blowpipe a little bit too much.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that.
That's why it only goes onto addy darts. I think it's interesting. I don't know. Like, knives are also reasonably fast, right? Like, they're the same attack speed. Why do we need something else alongside? It doesn't seem really necessary. But I do understand that, attack speed is king, and the blowpipe does play, because of its attack speed, does play a niche role. Does play a niche role in some combat encounters.
Yeah. And just as a comparison here, a rune knife has a plus 25 ranged attack compared to the plus 22 on that rosewood blowpipe.
Right, yeah.
So, but the difference being, of course, the fact you're dealing with darts there and the plus 4 range strength on that. I don't know what someone's range strength would come out to be if you were fully kitted up using one of these blowpipes, because the rune knife range strength bonus is plus 24.
Well, yeah, but this is in addition to the darts, right?
Yeah.
So,
okay, so in addition to the addy darts, you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. So an adamant dart has a plus 17 strength bonus.
All right, so plus 4, so that's 21, so it fits right under rune knives. But if you look at adamant knife, the adamant knife range strength bonus is plus 14. Okay, so this gives you significant more. Well, yeah, darts are better than knives, I guess.
Yeah, and
so this is just like a compared to darts, using darts directly just gives you that little bit of extra strength and attack.
Yeah.
Fair.
All right. Herb lore and cooking.
There we go. I
already mentioned what I think about the food that has the secondary effects on it. I think the bigger thing to talk about is herb lore.
I don't know what I feel about coral becoming a primary ingredient. Like, herb lore has basically no exceptions except for a few, mostly quest concoctions. There's always a herb as a primary ingredient, and now all of a sudden it can also be coral. That seems a little bit strange to me. That I am not sure.
It goes in the same vein as weapon poison, the coconut-based weapon poisons. That's probably the most widespread non-water-based potion out there.
Yes, yeah. I don't know if this is the kind of integration we should be going for. Like, I'm okay with there being like a new herb, and that herb to be thematically related to sailing. I don't know what I think of coral. It feels a little bit like doing something new and fresh for the sake of doing something new and fresh.
And you have just got to the point of everything in this blog post so far, because it all and let's not be wrong for the listeners. Everything in here is good for sailing, I think. But
yeah, I mean, the one thing that at least this herb lore, like a lot of these things that they do as a reward, either feeds back into the ecosystem of sailing or solves pre-existing issues in the game. Like crab hunting solves hunter progression. The blowpipe solve, the fact that the blowpipe is one of its kind, but really is a must-have item and hard to get for Iron Man. Armadillo Brew and
I was wondering about the Armadillo Brew.
Armadillo Brew is actually pretty amazing, right? Like, it basically means it's basically a Saradomin brew,
But
but
for ranged.
for ranged, and you might not even need restores if you're really just focusing on ranged. How wild is that, right? Like that's sort of the amazing thing about Armadyl brews. It's a little bit like how Zamorak brews are being used for Magic.
Yeah. That's a good point.
So I think it fits like a good unique spot. Same with the anti-bleed tonic. We don't actually have a way to prevent bleeding, and it can be really problematic in some circumstances. So many of these solve like an interesting and good existing use case. But I don't.
Yeah, I think the potions are good.
Why
It's just a question of the coral.
the coral feels a little bit like, I mean, all of this is artificial, right? All of this is set up to use resources from sailing specifically to give sailing a purpose. But that sounds really negative, but that's honestly, we give new rewards to PVM bosses as well, just for the sake of making that boss useful, right? Like that's all of the rewards do that to some extent. So I'm not upset about that. But why does coral have to be a primary ingredient? Why can't the coral be a secondary ingredient?
Yeah. And you would, if you used herbs as the primary ingredient, you would then have different herbs to pull on, because I can guarantee you there's herbs on the herb list that are underused right now.
Bingo.
So that's that.
So that's the thing I dislike about the coral stuff. I don't mind the potions.
No, yeah.
But yeah.
Now, how do you feel about the cooking benefits? I already laid out my thoughts.
I like them. I think it's good getting like the first plus 24 hit point heal in a single bite is of course absolutely amazing. Which I like that this will likely, just like how anglerfish and manta rays are really solid, this will probably have a continuous enough demand that, and all of the deep sea trawling ones, probably all of them have like enough demand that deep sea trawling will probably be reasonably profitable.
That's what I was thinking. You know, looking at, you know, the bluefin tuna as an example, 87 cooking and plus 5 prayer points.
I mean, we all see. I mean, like you're never gonna rely on it.
No,
right?
But it's just a nice little bit around the edge.
Yeah. I saw that there was a little bit. So the fact that halibut, is a combo food. Thinking about that, and some people were like, "Oh, you know, actually, halibut is such a completely different type of fish compared to carambrans. Like, should maybe the combo food be another tentacly thing to be, you know, thematically similar to the carambrans?" Which kind of, to me, pointed out that there's, at least when it comes to fish and hunter meats, right? Because hunter meats also work differently. There's a clear sort of visual distinction. If you eat meat, like meat, it works differently than if you eat fish. But now we have all of these different fishes, and they all have slightly different effects, and I don't think it's going to be very discoverable. Unless you have access to a wiki. What does what?
Or a mouse over tooltip.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that gets implemented. But that's the one thing I'm worried about. Like, we're getting a lot of different
yeah, because
things.
These are the first fish that do something extra in game, right?
Anglerfish overheals.
Okay. But I feel like that's a simple interaction compared to restoring energy or prayer points.
Yeah, I mean, we have carambrans, combo food, and anglerfish overheal. I think that's the only two special fish we have here.
All right.
And then the blighted ones, of course, which only work in the wilderness and PvP.
Cannonballs. And cannoning in general with ship combat.
I mean, I dislike the combat still, and I'm sad to address any of the beta in this blog. The beta was not tried as much as the alpha. A lot of people on Reddit trust Jagex now, which fair enough. The alpha was great. So I don't really know what to make of this whole combat thing, but other than that, I think none of the smithing stuff and cannonball smithing is all too controversial. Interesting, we get cupro nickel, right? Which is also an alloy, but it's nickel plus 2 copper ores. So that's, buy copper ores, I would say. That's interesting to create an imbalance between copper and tin, but
Yeah, and I also think it's an interesting mix there to kind of add on a little bit extra to, rather than just having a base cannonball, you can get the chain shot and the incendiary options too for this.
yeah.
When you want to go for that. I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of ship-to-ship combat here, because there is just the whole discussion they had here about combat being sailing or ranged based. And I think you and I came to the same conclusion on this.
I disagree with that conclusion. I think it should be range based.
Me too.
We are talking about, like, to me it feels so weird. They have this entire blog post about integration with other skills, but then we are afraid to integrate it into ranged.
Yeah.
Or into yeah.
And the only thing I'll say, the thing that just makes me scratch my head, is the sentence, accuracy and damage will be determined by your sailing level.
Yeah, it doesn't feel right. It also goes a little bit against the whole idea, I feel, where to me sailing is really the navigation part, and sure, as part of combat you're also navigating the ship while shooting the cannon, and I don't mind if it's mixed XP, but it should include some ranged XP. And one of the great examples or great suggestions I saw from someone is that, you know what? Let's make it so that if you have one of your crewmates man the cannon, it only gives you sailing XP, and if you do it yourself, you also get ranged XP. All of a sudden, skillers can still make use of the cannons on their ship. They just have to always make sure that the crew mans it, which I think is a totally fine trade-off. Like, there are solutions here.
Yep. And that kind of just goes to what we said in the beta too, about how combat just feels kind of there, kind of just tacked on.
I'd totally be okay with them taking out combat from the initial launch and then bringing it back in with a good ranged integration.
Yeah, but I don't think they will, because that's something that you see a boat going by, you expect it to, go boom, boom and fire the cannons.
Yeah. I just think that their argument of like, oh, cannons and temporos and barbarian assault are not range based. I mean, come on, that's you're grasping for arguments there. I feel like, yes, sure, that means that there's precedent of using a cannon without ranged. There are also precedents for you sailing a ship without sailing.
And then we get back to a very philosophical point.
So I disagree. I disagree with it.
That's perhaps the biggest bit there. And then construction used to build ship hull parts. We knew that. The 3 planks we mentioned previously. Fine, you need that, or else you don't have a skill.
Yeah, I mean, look at how expensive those are, right? Like, I don't think they might necessarily offset the construction meta, especially if you don't make them give that much more construction XP.
Yeah.
I think it's fine.
Yeah.
I'm even looking, construction XP per plank is 160, 175, and 190. A mahogany plank represents 140 experience. So let's say you would be able to consume rosewood planks as quickly as you consume mahogany planks. That would only be an increase of 35% in your XP rate, which is significant. Sure, it's a third faster. But at the same time, making it costs 6 times as much gold. No, sorry. I can't math. 5 times as much gold. So do you want to spend 5 times as much gold to get 35 XP more per hour?
There are people that would.
Yeah, and let them. Let them! Who bloody cares? Construction is fast already anyway. And I would love to get like another tier of construction contracts that we can do.
Yeah, and again, this isn't the integration for it into the rest of the game. I feel like everything here is just laser focused on sailing to, in some cases, prevent controversy. Because there are people who would, if those planks were usable in construction, they would make that the entire deal out of this post.
Maybe. I mean, it feels like they're a little bit too afraid to upset existing metas like teak, free tick, and mahogany XP per hour in construction. And that, to me, is the biggest disappointment of this blog post. I feel you need to accept that some of the metas will shift. Because otherwise, you are walking such a thin balance.
You could say you're walking the plank.
You're walking such a thin plank at that point. And I don't think sailing will be a success over that. I think you need to take those risks.
Right, and that's the thing that this entire blog post is saying, is that sailing is selling itself based on the skilling integrations up to this point.
Yeah, but I feel that the integrations are very careful. And I understand they want to launch conservatively, but it at least initially it's going to really feel like its own isolated ecosystem regardless, and that's sort of disappointing.
All right, and then there's just going to be a whole bunch of other things that you're going to be able to thieve. We've seen a lot of these before. I think the only one that we have not seen is the cannonball stall, plus all the chests that come from doing the various sailing things.
Yeah, it's interesting. These stalls will be a little bit differently as they don't deplete. But from what I could see in the video about this, basically there will be guards sort of rotating around the market, and if you get seen, it's sort of a guaranteed catch. So it's a slightly different way of stall stealing, which might be interesting, especially for Iron Man. Like, imagine the gem stall is going to be huge.
Yeah, and there's also slightly tweaked loot tables as well for the merchant stalls. Yeah. So that's sailing. Are you voting yes on everything?
No.
Okay. I'll leave that to the listeners to determine which ones you're not going to vote yes on. I think I'll vote yes on everything.
Well done.
So.
People always vote yes on everything. The polls are useless.
What wasn't useless?
I am.
You're being facetious?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. What wasn't useless was our venture into the Final Dawn. The Varlamore quests.
Yes.
Final Dawn. Let's just start with the combat aspects of this quest. They were sprinkled throughout, and they were all very mechanical.
Yes. What I really there was a really good build up as well. Like this, there were multiple. You like you said, the combat encounters were very sprinkled throughout, but it all sort of came together, and all of the combat mechanics sort of got reused in the final.
That's what I was going to say next. That's what I was going to say next.
Yeah.
That was good. And I was wondering how I was going to fare with this because I'm not a combat person. I had no problem until the end, and I got the end one on my second go. But folks might remember Avernick, who was on for the Desert Treasure episode, and he has combat in the level 70s, and he did all those combat encounters with a dragon scimitar and rune armor.
Yeah, which I think the combat encounters were designed in such a way. Like, for me, I was clearly over leveled, and if I look at the the hit points, like I went through them like butter. Like the combat encounters were not very long for me, but they were still long enough for me to have to deal with the mechanics and sort of figure them out.
Yeah.
But the complexity is really learning. It's really learning the mechanics and then dealing with them. And then the actual boss fight itself didn't feel like a grind. There's not a lot of unavoidable damage or hard stuff you have to do, which I think they struck the balance perfectly.
And that's the thing. Starting off from that first combat encounter, you learn a few of the mechanics, and then if you keep that in your mind throughout the quest, it's something that you're able to effectively build on for that. So that was good. When it comes to the puzzles of the quest, they were there. They were interesting.
I really enjoyed them, actually.
Okay.
Especially the final, the moon and the sun ones were
those,
really interesting.
Yeah, those were good.
They were by no means too difficult to solve. Like, they were pretty straightforward once you figured it out. But the controls of them worked really well. The fact that you were dealing with a companion, essentially, and that was not as jank as it could be, really spoke to the quality of the quest.
Yeah. And I feel like, you can go into a quest and it can be a quest that's for combat. You can go into a quest that is for puzzles. This was neither of those. This was, straightly down the middle of the road. And because of that, I think the balance they struck with the puzzles, that was good in this regard. My favorite one was the moon one compared to the sun one and everything else that we had.
Yeah, I like that one a little bit better. Yes.
So, and I guess at the end of it, we were also solving a little bit of a mystery along the way too, in terms of trying to uncover what was actually going on in Varlamore. Because you remember in Batch 2, we learned just how weird the people were up north, the cult, so to speak. And this was really, I think, a conclusion that concluded that Varlamore section of the episode and didn't go much beyond that.
So from basically the way I understood the quest, I might be wrong, but the way I understood the quest is that, so far we've been dealing with this cult, the God, how they call it again? I can find this. The Twilight Emissaries, there you go. So we've been dealing with that cult, essentially, and infiltrating them, and we've learned that this cult is really about, bringing back... Man, I am not on my game when it comes to lore.
Bringing back the old ways.
Bringing back the old ways, yeah. They want the final dawn to happen, essentially, and that's the name of the quest. But the idea is that the Metzli, Olga Metzli, really has been using the cult for her own reasons.
Mm-hmm.
She's not actually the religious believer that
was portrayed in part 2.
That was portrayed in part 2. She really just wants to to find this place, this library of the old ones, and get access to all of the knowledge there. I should probably have put a spoiler warning before this section, by the way. Sorry.
Nah, it's fine. It's not Desert Treasure 2.
And that's it. So that's really the story. We've been dealing with this cult, but actually we're not caring about this cult and just this one person who's been using the cult for her own good. Which, personally, okay, it's fine. It's an interesting twist.
It's an intertwined story about Varlamore.
Yes,
that's really what it is.
All in all, while this story did a good job at like introducing us to all of the different parts of Varlamore and its culture, I find the overall story very forgettable.
Right. Because it was about that one person. And I guess, and you correct me if I'm wrong on this, is that when we did Kingdom Divided, starting from Client of Corrin, that was a much broader storyline that left in the background the specter of something that was still a big bad.
Yeah, exactly. Like that had a clear like supernatural element, of course. Like Samphur we had to deal with. Lots
Yeah.
of
And we got a
if you
few
if you
references of the old ones in the Final Dawn, but it didn't go that direction.
Exactly. If you think back, like A Kingdom Divided, of course, ends on a massive shock where the king gets assassinated, like right after being crowned king, which of course leaves like a massive open gap for like a future story. When it comes to the Final Dawn, everything seems to be sort of wrapped and done with, and no loose threads.
We were thinking that the Final Dawn would kind of match up in that same way that Kingdom Divided would, and point towards some Grandmaster that brings those two together. But I don't think
exactly.
you do that from where Final Dawn ended.
Exactly. And to me that is sort of a shame. Like this will probably be the requirement for that Grandmaster quest, because Varlamore relations with a Kingdom Divided with Corrin basically becomes sort of healed as part of a Kingdom Divided. But I don't know. I like that things end. I don't like when movies and films these days always need to leave this like big open gap for like there could be a future thing, but this could have, because we expect there to be something in the future.
But and go back to the RuneFest lore panel. Stories end.
Yes, I know, but we know that. I don't know.
No,
maybe
I was playing devil's advocate there, because there's so many other things left to pull on with the old ones. What we saw in the Garden of Death, you could even, as much as we'd like to, I don't think you need to work in the Stranglewood from Desert Treasure 2. All of these things would provide a very compelling, dark, spooky Grandmaster quest.
Yeah. Look, like maybe we're just wrong to begin with. Maybe they never intended for this to connect up to whatever is happening in Current, which is fine. I don't think they ever confirmed this themselves, and this is just
that they were meant
my
to be
own
linked.
thinking.
Yeah,
but I don't know. Overall,
would you
just a little bit?
Sorry, finish your thought. Then I have a revelation.
Like overall, this quest felt. Oh, this quest line felt okay. Like it's not my least favorite one, but it doesn't feel like it does anything special. I like this quest series for the combat it did, for the puzzles it did, but not for its story.
Yeah. This was a master level quest. Would I surprise you if I told you that A Kingdom Divided was an experienced level quest?
Oh yeah, that does surprise me. I think that is not the right rating.
So that kind of makes you think, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, the Varlamore story is effectively complete there. That's where we wanted to end this podcast, because we kind of started with Varlamore, but one thing that Varlamore has done that has just been so great has been the little itty-bitty quests along the way, and we're going to start with Shadows of Custodia for this one. And going into this one, I thought we were going to be dealing with a true crime quest.
Interesting.
And we never did really figure out what was causing the abductions here, did we? Into the
stalkers, the stalkers that we killed. Duh.
Yeah.
Yeah, the nice thing about these small quests is really giving something to Varlamore that current is lacking, right? Like, we have Getting Ahead, we have Garden of Death, but we don't really have a lot of just standalone quests.
Ordinary quests.
Exactly.
And the whole point of this quest is to really unlock the Custodian, Stalkers, and Slayer dungeon.
Exactly.
They did some nice stuff pulling in on the Stranglewood vibes from just west of there, which, isn't what we're dealing with here, because these are the stalker creatures, or Custodian Stalkers, I could say. A stalker creature is something else. But overall, quite enjoyable. I like the 10,000 Slayer XP for such a short quest.
Always nice when you get that.
Yeah. That's really my thoughts on Shadows of Custodia. I like the vibe of it. I like the mystery aspect of it, even though the mystery was solved somewhat quickly in that regard. Do more mystery verging on true crime quests like this, please, Jagex.
Yeah, they went for a little bit more of a horror vibe, and I think they got that. Like you said, they got that Stranglewood vibe there going on as well. So absolutely good one. And this is the kind of small stuff that I do believe makes an area feel more lived in and part of the bigger game world.
And complete.
Yes.
Yeah. You ready for Scrambled?
Sure.
Alan and his egg.
Yeah.
So the whole point of this quest is putting...
You can't even keep it together.
No,
wow.
There's an accident, and Humphrey Dumphrey sat on a wall and has a great fall and breaks.
Yeah.
And you have to put them back together. And your character is censored in this one if you have the censor on. Oh my god. It was too good.
Yeah. It's a very silly quest.
If you know Humpty Dumpty, you know this quest.
Exactly.
With the addition of needing to kill a red dragon.
Yes, with the addition of killing a red dragon, that's for sure. Yeah. What is there to say really about this quest? Coincidence would have it that, like, just 2 hours before we did that quest, I had been doing Getting Ahead on my Iron Man, and this quest has exactly the same vibes.
Yeah.
I don't want to say it's a carbon copy, but it's very similar.
It's different.
Vibe.
It's different enough with the with the egg involved, and just the dialogue with it to kind of excuse that.
It makes you run around, but all of the things you had needed are available in the village somewhere. Which is great. I love that you don't really have to bring any of your own resources. There's a bunch of NPCs involved, a bunch of small little side quests. The whole thing is a little bit silly, and then Alan dies.
Just randomly, I'm like, we're heading towards quest complete, and then he starts walking down the pyramid, and then he just friggin' trips and falls, and that's it.
Gravity is a cruel bitch.
Oh my god. The trivia section of the wiki. King was originally intended to be a male NPC in reference to the original nursery rhyme, but a miscommunication between the developers resulted in King being made a female NPC instead. this was kept in due to it fitting the hubris tone of the quest.
I'm all for it. Yeah, well, silly quest. I don't think it blew me out of the water.
No.
People were having very silly responses of it, and I was like, nah, it's about on brand for the game, so it didn't surprise me that much, but it was a fun addition.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And now I have a pet egg in my POH to keep my pet rock happy.
Which, if you drop the egg, it actually disappears, and you have to go back to the temple to get another one.
Mm-hmm.
I found that out the hard way. But with that being said, Varlamore was full of these little quests, and we need to talk about our favorite Varlamore quest as we wrap this one up.
Well, you start then.
I don't think there's any contest.
Contest, all right.
It's the frog quest, the ribbiting tail.
Hear that, guys? Shane is pro-union.
Read the quest. Read the quest.
Yeah, I think the frog quest was a surprise to everyone, and I think probably the best one of the bunch as well.
Yeah, if we're going to go on Varlamore quests in particular, relating to the storyline, I have to say Final Dawn. I really didn't like the second one, and I think the first one was very introductory.
Yeah. But yes, I mean, Riveting Till is actually a mod at quest. So,
yeah. But if I was gonna just not focus on the Varlamore story entirely, and I was just gonna have my two favorite quests out of Varlamore, all three batches, it would be Riveting Tale, and I think I surprised you with this one. My second one would be Perilous Moons.
Yeah, that's interesting because as far as quests go, it's not really much of a quest as in an introduction to the PVM encounter.
And I think it was doing that introduction to the PVM encounter and effectively teaching you how to do that encounter is what made it for me.
Yeah, I do think that the Karntorn lore is perhaps some of the most interesting lore as well in all of Varlamore. Like the whole Nagra lore is super interesting to me. So it's nice that there's a quest that sort of highlighted that.
Yeah. I didn't outright ask you for your favorite, but I'm assuming Frog Quest as well.
Yeah, I think my second favorite one, which is probably the more controversial one, is Death on the Isle.
Okay. Yeah,
really
like
well
I said,
executed.
I didn't like many of the quests from Batch 2, but go for it.
Yeah, it's to me it's a good implementation of the sort of mystery quest. It also feels exactly like how I can imagine a D&D campaign going.
Right.
With some of the silly stuff and asking people. I think it's a great quest. Of course, I love the costume needle as well. All in all, I definitely up there in sort of my the top half of the quests.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe it was just my perspective at the time of when I played that it didn't really resonate with me in terms of where I was at the game. That could also be a factor there going into that too. But that's Varlamore. We started with batch 1, batch 3 done.
Now we wait for batch 4, right? Which is Tempestus.
Yeah, that's interesting. I took my free cam over there. It's complete in terms of the buildings, but there's nothing in the buildings.
It would not surprise me if at this upcoming summer summit
they talk about it.
Yeah, they talk about it. Yeah,
that's fair.
that being said, Tempestus, Manethos, aren't they going to be, see how long we have to wait for Manethos. Maybe Tempestus will be equally a long wait. Though I hope not. I hope we get it reasonably soon.
Right, now that the map is filled in.
Exactly, but also because I think Tempestus being released is probably going to be sort of the biggest point where they would be happy to release a Varlamore achievement diary.
Oh, that's a good point, because people have been asking about if and when that'll be coming.
Yes.
That's fair. Okay. Well, that's pretty much it for this week. That's the end of the content for, I guess, OSRS update. But we will be back next week with the final episode. And what our plan is generally for this is to do a bit of a retrospective, a wind down of where we started, where we're at now, what we learned along the way. And one thing we'd like to have for that is your guys' input, your questions. If you have any, please do send those along for us. So if you want to send those along, what you'll do, the best way to do that is to use our Discord, update.show/Discord, and then in the OSRS update channel, there will be a thread alongside this episode asking for questions or just general contribution ideas for this last episode. So if you have questions about my old school experience, Sirion's old school experience, anything along the way about the show that we've learned, whether it be about building the show or things we've learned in terms of doing content for the show, let us know. We'll go through all that.
Any behind the scenes and things you want to know as well, we are happy to talk about it.
Yeah, we'll just build it all out and see if we get any discussion on that. Eager to talk about that and look into that. And in many ways, it's going to be an interesting episode because I've actually never produced a finale for these podcasts before, because RSVP update is still going with no signs of stopping. So this is going to be the first finale that I've ever produced. It's going to be interesting from that perspective too.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want that episode when it automatically arrives, update.show/OS. You can subscribe there on your favorite podcast listening services. We're on all the big ones out there: Apple Podcasts, Pocket Cast, Spotify, and more. And of course, YouTube at youtube.com/@OSRS update. Thank you, Sirion, for being here.
Happy to be here as always.
Indeed. And for the last time, in air quotes, we'll be back next week for another episode of the Old School RuneScape Update. See you then, everyone. Take care.
Bye.